You can tell just by looking at it that the Baltic MR01 is a beautiful piece of watchmaking. But that doesn't explain why, in a time when dress watches aren't as popular as sports models, this MR01 is so hard to get. It's not impossible, but it always seems to run out of stock. Or why less than 2 years ago, when this watch was released, it completely took over Instagram's watch scene. Almost comparable to Studio Underdog's watermelon watch. The reason for all this isn't that this watch is somehow attractive. The reason for all this is that it is special. And here's why. Hi everyone, do subscribe to our new channel as we have a lot of fun content planned for you. Thanks for all your support. In 1932, a time when pocket watches were nothing short of extravagance, Patek Philippe introduced a fairly simple watch, even by its own standards, the Calatrava Reference 96. The reason for this rather unexpected move was simple. The Stern brothers decided to release the Calatrava as an attempt to save the company from financial difficulties. We all know the state of the world during those years, so it's not a surprise. The Calatrava was to become the Patek Philippe for the mainstream clientele. It's still a Patek, so not that mainstream, but still more appealing to the masses. Basically, it removed all of the ornamentations and complications that a Patek pocket watch was known for. As Andrew Morgan stated exquisitely, it was like Ferrari selling a pickup truck. But luckily for the brand, this move proved to be quite successful. So much so that the Reference 96 became a trend-setting icon that almost every dress watch that came afterwards followed. The slim case profile, the clean, minimalist dial layout, it was almost like a blank canvas that could adapt even higher complications like the moon phase, chronographs, or even a tourbillon. That's why if you place the Reference 96 next to the likes of the Grand Seiko Heritage line or even something affordable like an Orient Bambino, you would immediately be able to point out all of the inspired similarities. But the Patek Philippe Reference 5026 is what comes to mind when looking at the Baltic MR01. You've got all of the simplistic elegance, but also an off-center sub-seconds dial, and of course the legendary Breguet numerals. Numerals that were designed by Abraham Louis Breguet himself to add a bit of elegance on his pocket watches all the way back in the late 1700s. Combining all of these different elements from these two historic watchmakers, Patek Philippe and Breguet, but presenting them in a more affordable package, just so that the vast majority of people can appreciate this style, this particular style of watchmaking, is exactly what Baltic did with the MR01. Like Patek Philippe's first Calatrava from the 1930s, or the Japanese brand's first Grand Seiko from the 1960s, Baltic pursued the seemingly never-ending chase of designing its own version of the perfect wristwatch. Something that doesn't wear too big nor too small. Something that's simple at first glance, but pulls you in the more you stare at it. At a time when automatic movements with micro rotors are a niche within a niche, Baltic did the unexpected and designed a watch with exactly that. An automatic watch with a micro rotor movement. The MR01 comes in a perfectly sized 36mm stainless steel case that gives off vintage watch vibes, but does have quite a decent wrist presence thanks to all of the polished surfaces on the front. That plus the thick fixed bezel. I'd say it wears slightly larger than a 36mm watch. The thickness of the case, including the highly domed crystal, is just about 10mm, with the lug to lug measuring up to 44mm and the distance between the lugs coming down to an ideal 20mm. The crystal isn't sapphire, but because it's not sapphire, it gives off that distorted look that you'd only get with a Hesalite crystal, and therefore staying true to the design aesthetics of a vintage watch. The case finishing is highly polished from the top and brushed on the sides and back of the lugs. But the high polishing is what makes this watch eye-catching, because the mirror finishing isn't limited to just the case. It's also applied on the leaf-style hands and the applied Arabic numerals. And against the grain texture matte tile, the polished hands and numerals just pop, creating almost a Grand Seiko-ish contrast. The sub-second style has a radial texture, slightly distinguishing it from the granular, almost bead-blasted center that takes up the majority of the dial. But running along the edges is a satin-finished railroad chapter ring, something that you don't really see on watches in this price range. While the brand does manufacture rugged tool watches like the Aquascaf Titanium, offering 300 meters of water resistance and a screw-down crown, the MR01 is Baltic's interpretation of a dress watch. So you get a simple push-pull crown with 30 meters of water resistance, and to be honest, we can't be mad at that. But where most are powered by workhorse Swiss or Japanese movements, this MR01 features an automatic Hangshu caliber 5000A. Now, while this is a Chinese-made movement, it is also what sets this watch apart from the rest of the competition. Because for this price, you can't really get a micro-rotor movement. And that's what Baltic wanted to offer. The movement offers 42 hours of power reserve, a beat frequency of 28,800 vibrations per hour, and is adjusted for 5 positions, so ends up having a decent accuracy of plus minus 20 seconds per day. Not too bad performance-wise. 20mm lug width means that you could swap out the strap for easily available third-party options, although the Italian calf leather that the watch comes with is actually really good. Right out of the box, it's quite soft and easily molds on your wrist, and even features quick release spring bars, meaning that you don't run the risk of scratching those gorgeous lugs with your spring bar tool. The watch never looks the same twice. Because of the high polished surfaces, it constantly plays with light. It's one of those things that sounds fairly simple on paper, but gets more and more interesting the more time you spend with it. Whether you opt for the salmon or other dial variants, the MR01 is a watch that deserves to be seen in person before any judgment is made. It's such a great looking dress watch for its price. Red Army Watches Malaysia is an authorized dealer for Baltic watches and provides both domestic and global delivery service on all watches. So make sure to check out the website and Instagram for updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.